we hold more data on new buildings than the local government do. So when the horrendous Grenfell fire happened in the UK, which I'm pretty known around the world now, we were the first, not the first people, but the government contacted us to ask us how many high-rise buildings there were in London, because they just didn't know. But we do, because we track all of the data for these new buildings, so we're able to then filter down and say, here are all the ones identified as certain size, certain height buildings, and we can feed that information and pass it out to local government.
Hey there, Sam here with the Flow Lab. Before we begin, I want to tell you about a free ebook that we have called What If Houses Came with Manuals? It's a practical resource that shows you how to think about the whole house as a system and not just treating the symptoms. You'll learn about blower door testing, pressure diagnostics, and HVAC analysis. We're sure that this guide will level up your testing game. The link is in the description below.
Welcome to the Flow Lab, the podcast where we dive deep into the science of building performance and HVAC innovations. Today we bring you another insightful episode aimed to enhance your knowledge and expertise in the field. Joining us are your co-hosts, Ben Walker, co-CEO of RetroTech, and Sam Myers, a renowned building science specialist and RetroTech trainer. Together, they bring a wealth of experience and knowledge to ensure our discussions are both informative and engaging. So, sit back, relax, and get ready to enter the Flow Lab, where we'll explore the world of building performance. Let's get started.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, thanks for joining us. The Flow Lab podcast is kind of a new thing that we started, Sam and I, and we just kind of started with like the evolution of the blower door and where it came from and stuff. So, it's really great to have you on here as well.
Oh, thank you. Well, I guess we represent a huge amount of the UK blower door market. I think there's some crazy stat that 85% of all of the blower door testing that happens in the UK comes through our Lodgement system. And yeah, it's a pretty high number. We look after most of the blower door. I think it's somewhere around 180,000 tests a year.
Wow.
Lodged through our system. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about that at the ATTMA conference. I'm over in Denver.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we have a lot of listeners here in the United States. So maybe just start off by telling us a little about what ATTMA is and then how you kind of got involved with the industry.
Yeah, so ATTMA is the Airtightness Testing and Measurement Association. So back in 2002, a small trade association was started, and it was quite literally four guys in a room that did blower door in the UK. Not really a thing. Science was still very young. And it was just four people getting in a room trying to make sure that they're all doing it fairly and equally, sharing knowledge, sharing their abilities, sharing their tips and tricks. And really, the organization is now substantially bigger, but still with those fundamental core elements, which is we are here as a certification program. We look after around 600 blower door testers at any one time, as well as 100 or so from Australia. I think there's maybe 20 in the Middle East. We have some in New Zealand as well. So we look after a good chunk of the industry around the world. And we create software. We develop programs that support the blower door industry. And we've really streamlined the process in the UK. We've worked with lots of the building inspector businesses over here to make sure that when you see and when you return a single page ATTMA Lodgement certificate, I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more, that it's the trusted source. And, we have members joining us even this week that say, there's two options written into the UK building code. You can be an ATTMA member or our competitor. And people are still joining us because they're embarrassed to say that they're a member of our competitor, which is just awesome.
That's great.
Right on.
Oh, that's cool.
So when did you become involved with ATTMA?
So 2014, I was approached. The kind of world changed. I was always involved with ATTMA maybe from 2007, 2008. I was doing blower door testing. I was one of the guys in the field. In 2006, it dropped into the UK building code, and we were testing maybe one in every 8 buildings, one in every 8 dwellings. And I was one of those testers, and we were one of the members of ATTMA back then, and it grew to maybe 19 member companies. And then I left the industry for a year to do acoustic consultancy. So I'm also an acoustic consultant. Fun fact, I'm known as Mr. Blower Door in the UK, but actually I'm an acoustic consultant. And then
They go
the
hand in hand.
business of the business of ATTMA changed. It became this business rather than being a trade association with people sitting around a table. We made it into a business, into a certification program, and I was called by the then chair. I'm sure you know Rob Coxon. He phoned me and said, "Hey Barry, come and do the job. Come be the guy that looks after this business. You're independent. You're not involved with any of the businesses here. We think you're going to do a great job." And I said, "Yeah, we'll maybe do it for a year. I'll come for a year and I'll help you guys out. We'll get the thing going, and then I'll step back and I'll go back to doing what I do." And that was in 2014, end of 2014.
Oh, wow.
And that was 10 and a half years ago. I joined and got the thing going.
Just can't get away.
Yeah, so it's been one hell of a journey. So we've gone from sitting around a table arguing about things to now having full-time people that work in IT. We have here the Building Performance Hub. So there's a 10,000 square foot warehouse, and we built an entire house inside, not just bits of a house, not just a couple of small rooms. We built an entire house inside a warehouse so that we could use it really for blower door training, so that when we were training people to come and do the testing, we have a pitched roof, so a vaulted ceiling. We have complicated dormers sections. We have everything you would likely to face in the real world, so that when we train people over here in the UK, they train in the most real world conditions, in some of the toughest conditions they're likely to get. We can do some weird things too. We can blow fans out the building. We can create awkward pressures. We stand on people's tubes. We try and do everything we can to give some real world testing. And also
that stuff always happens.
Yeah, the warehouse we're in. So we're in a massive warehouse. It has, I think, at the front it's 40 feet tall. So it's a decent height. So we actually have a building that we can use for multi-fan testing. So we can chuck 3 fans in the rear door and test the whole building. So we can do the whole package. We can test everything at once. So yeah, we've gone from this small trade association to becoming a small business, to becoming a big business, and then branching out into ventilation and acoustics naturally. We have solar panels, air source heat pump training. We do ventilation commissioning. We certainly punch above our weight here.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome. Isn't the house that you have in the warehouse there is like it's peeled back so you can kind of still see like the building layers and things like that? And...
Yeah, it was inspired by ProClimber in New Zealand. They built what was then called the ProClimber Hub. It's now, I think, called the Cube. And they built a building within a warehouse to show off their membranes and the application of their membranes. And I was training in New Zealand, saw the thing, and I was like, we need one of these in the UK. We need to do this. So yeah, we call them honesty panels. So the actual, if you look at the house from left to right, it's fully complete to not very complete, just about airtight. And on the inside, we have the same. We've cut back some of the drywall. We have exposed a lot of the timbers. You can see the difference between warm roof and cold roof constructions. You can see some of the insulation and where the cable runs are, so that you can walk in and really quickly get a feel for how it's almost like an X-ray of a building in real life, in real time. So people can look at a building and go, that's how you do a roof. That's where the membrane sits on the internals in the UK. So you can see it really, really easily and really clearly.
Yeah, I hope to make it over there sometime to check it out, because I've seen a bunch of pictures and videos that you've posted on LinkedIn. And is it always that clean? That's one thing I've always noticed. It just looks so clean and organized.
It is. It is. We just move the dirt behind the camera. That's what we do.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, it's like
we just constantly sweep behind the camera and make it look pretty. But no, it's a pretty slick setup. It was always designed to be that way and designed to inspire. That we looked at maybe, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 70 buildings before we decided on the one we're in, because we wanted that wow factor. We wanted people to walk in and go, wow, I feel inspired to learn. And that you wouldn't get from a warehouse that was dark or dingy or smells. So we ended up in a brand new building, 40 feet ceilings, entire house inside there. And actually we say to people, hey, that's like a 700 square foot house. And they go, no way. And if you took that outside and put that next to a house on the estate where we are, it would be bigger than some of the houses that are there. But when you take a photo of it, it doesn't look as impressive. It's really hard to photograph with the scale,
the perspective,
inside a building. Yeah, there's no perspective. Only when people stand near it, you go, that is a pretty big house. It's as real as you get, and we can mess with it. That's the cool thing. So if we say, hey, let's make it an air leakage of 10 or 10 ACH 50, we can just do that. If we want to make it super tight, we can do that. It's in our control as a business, so we can mess with it. We can try new products. We can spray stuff. We can do whatever we like to it in order to play with the fabric of that building and create whichever environment we want to create.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been to a similar training facility that we have here in the States in Chicago by CETA. They're a weatherization training center, and they did a very similar thing. They have a warehouse, and they built a house inside to show different types of roofs, having things peeled back, showing different ways to air seal, and it's just such a great way to learn. Because like you said, it just exposes everything. It's a lot easier to just show how it's all put together and then try to explain it.
Yeah, you can see within 2 or 3 seconds straight away, this is what a roof looks like. Or in those details, you can really break it down, particularly in, the UK is a small country in terms of its landmass, so we don't really have climate zones. We have England and we have Scotland, and they're not that far different compared to America. So we don't have the weather extremes, but there are some really cool places where you go and they'll be like, hey, this is how you build in Texas, and this is how you build in Ohio, and this is how you build in Washington, and this is how they build in Canada, and you can start to see the differences really quickly just by looking at models, and that is so powerful. It's so underrated that you can quickly see those types of models and just learn within 3 seconds. That's how it's done.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Texas, I know you've come over a few times to do some trainings there. So I think there's some initiatives to bring ATTMA's Lodgement system over to the States. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm actually over in May. I'm going to Denver and then flying from Denver down to Houston. We do a little bit of training with Texas A&M University, which is a pretty big university there. They have a private-public partnership, and we get involved. We've taught a bunch of blower door stuff. We mainly focus with the contractors because there's the step that we need to get over, which is the contractors know blower doors coming, the building contractors. They know it's coming. And what we provide is a kind of half, 3/4 day of, hey, come to a building. We're going to talk to you about blower door. We're going to tell you how to prepare, what power you need, what you need to do with the HVAC in accordance with the different standards. We're going to do a blower door test. We're going to get the thermal imaging out, and we're also going to chuck some smoke around. We're going to show you this is what a blower door is. Don't be scared of it. Don't fear the blower door. And more often than not, the building contractors come out and they go, actually, you know what? That's really good. I don't know why during my lead assessment I fought so hard not to do a blower door. I don't know why I've been putting this off so much, because actually all of the problems that are in this building, we don't have those problems because we do this, and we always lap our membranes this way. And we think our stucco is so good that we're not going to have that problem. Our air barrier is built here, and and they learn, and it reduces that fear level. So the next project they build, they say, actually, we're going to pay to have a blower door test, even though I don't need one because I now don't fear it. So it's kind of breaking that boundary between this big scary test for people that have never had a test. And that the market is very different in the north of the country, where testing is a lot more regular, normalized. In the south, you're testing for different reasons to some extent. You're not worried about energy loss and heat loss. You're trying to keep the cold in and the humidity control.
Trying to keep it dry.
Trying to keep the thing dry.
Yeah.
And it's less of a problem because right now they just stick in a bigger AC unit and they just handle it. And so it's just trying to break down those barriers and say, hey, you can do a blower door test. It might cost you $1,000, but you could save $10,000 on your AC system because you can downsize quite substantially if you focus on your fabric.
Yeah.
And those arguments come second. Once we've done the blower door, we can then, some people will stay and we'll do day 2 and we'll talk about those things. We'll talk about solar panels and we'll say, hey, this is like the sunniest place I've ever been in my life. You can see, those of you that are going to watch this on video, you'll be able to see my pale British complexion. We don't get much sun, so when I go to Texas, I absolutely burn. But we talk about, hey, you have sun. Why don't you have solar panels everywhere? And they go, we don't need them. And then they have these incredible storms that cut the power for 3 days because Texas isn't on the national grid over there. And I go, hey, if you'd have had solar panels and batteries, do you remember that class I taught? And there's a correlation between bad weather events in Texas and the number of courses that I run when I go over there. There's a direct correlation between the two. It is fantastic. It's brilliant. Because suddenly, and it's the same in the UK when we have slightly different problems. So energy prices got really high over here. I think On average, we pay 5 times more for our electricity than you do in the States. So when energy prices spike, airtightness becomes incredibly sexy. People want to talk about it. They want to go, how can I save energy? Actually, let's talk about solar panels. Let's talk about building fabric. Let's talk about insulation. And when energy prices drop, there's a direct correlation. No one phones us anymore. No one's interested because energy price is cheaper. So sometimes it takes a bit of a disaster for us to be super popular.
Yeah. I guess they're more influenced by the stick instead of the carrot at that point.
Absolutely. Always.
How do people find out about the trainings and stuff? Just on the ATTMA website and stuff, or like the upcoming one in Houston and stuff? Or
yeah, ATTMA website. We also, the training we do in America is through an organization called NABCTA, the North American Building Compliance Testers Association.
Alphabet soup.
There is so much history behind that organization. We can maybe talk about over a beer, definitely not for the podcast, but there's history behind it. There's a little bit of fighting, a little bit of tears, a little bit of money lost. But effectively, it's a copy of our organization here, the BCTA group. Building Compliance Testers Association is a UK-based business that looks after ATTMA. We took that to North America with the intentions of taking our trainings over there and just dipping our toe in the American market. What we didn't realize was America's a big place. Everybody says that. It's a really big place. You don't even have the same code requirements in the next town, let alone
it's impossible to keep up with. It's a nightmare.
It's bad enough here. We have 4 countries, England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then we have some much smaller, we call them crown dependencies, but maybe only a few hundred people live on various islands around the British Isles. And it's trying to keep up with that's hard enough, but I'd go to Texas and speak to building inspectors, and you go, "Oh my God, you're 15 miles down the road, and you don't do any of this stuff." And over here, they absolutely have to. And then you chuck in the Texas insurance? I want to say TMI, Texas something insurance, where if you're within 16 miles of the coast, you have to do a bunch of testing. It's super important. You roof uplift testing.
Yeah,
they do E1105 testing. They do a bunch of testing because of the hurricane threat.
Yep, they get a lot of hurricanes through there.
You cross the border, nothing. 16 miles in, nothing. It just, all testing stops. They build how they like. They're not worried about it one tiny bit. As if the storms get to 16 miles and they go, nah, you're good. You're good. Which is, I find it the most incredible thing that you don't have. Yeah. You also have an international building code. Yeah, that I find amazing, and it's only for you guys.
Yeah,
surely that's the national building code.
They call it the International Energy Efficiency Code because Canada uses it too in a few small places, so that barely gets in there. So they're able to get that international name into it, and that's what's such a nightmare. Like states will adopt a certain version of it. I think we get new updates of it every 4 years. So there's everything from 2009 to 2001, I think. And then what they'll do is states will adopt it and then make amendments. So like here in North Carolina, we have 2018 with airtightness testing removed and then some of the insulation standards tweaked. So it's stupid,
it's all
really.
over the map, yeah.
But and then like you said, it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And sometimes it just depends on one building official. One building official might enforce it over here. Another one doesn't over here. So it's, you got to know who's going to come inspect to know, what you have to do.
It's crazy to me. We just have a centralized top-down system. So they say, as of this date,
I'm jealous.
You now have this code, and this code says do this. And I get you have complications with climate zones and things, but I'm just surprised. I talk a lot about America, and people ask me naturally, and more so lately than ever, ask me a lot of questions about the travel into the US. And I say to them, what you don't understand is the states are like their own countries.
Mm-hmm.
We have England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. And the states are even more independent than the UK is. The UK, we're pretty joined up thinking. Our building regulations are almost identical. They tweak them just for some politics, but fundamentally, we build the same buildings. But you go to the states and this individual, you're not just looking at statewide, you're looking at county-wide, you're looking at town-wide, you're looking at building inspector-wide. You can just have it's so varied, and therefore breaking America, coming back to my original point in terms of training and being involved, is going to take a way bigger budget than I've got from the UK perspective to do that. So we kind of took a step back and we've focused very much on stayed having fun in South Texas, but it's definitely on my list. Coming to Denver this year is not really us dipping the toe in the market. It's great to catch up with Laverne
Oh, yeah.
They're kind of the ATTMA of America. They're the ISO 17024 accredited.
Yep.
They are looking after a lot of blower door testers. We just do things a very different way from them. We are a very independent business. We don't have any commercial funding whatsoever. We're a member-owned organization. So all of our fees, all of our revenue is generated by lodgement certificates. So they lodge a test on a central database, on our central database. They pay a fee every time they do that test, which is like $3. And that's what pays all of our salaries here.
Wow.
Most of those tests come through. And so the more testing that gets done, the more income we create, the more cool documents and software and things that we're able to generate. So potentially one day we could come to America and say, hey, the ATTMA is here and we could compete with the Air Barrier Association of America, or we join forces with them and say, hey, Air Barrier Association of America, look at this $5 million lodgement system that we have that works already with, Retrotec's Fantastic and our own ATTMA app and all of these super cool standards around the world. We could join forces with them and make a bit of a powerhouse and try and make that work. So that's not really my intentions for Denver per se, but we should talk about centralized lodgement openly in that forum, because my talk is all about how the data is able to influence policy, because you can look at change, you can look at what's working, what's not, you can look at the extremes, you can look at the worst 10% of buildings and say, here is what the regulation needs to target. This section is good, we're happy with those. This section is bad, so we need to make sure this is the bit we focus on. And you don't know that unless you actually have the data to influence those decisions. And if you have 6 million databases all over the country, and this company has a few tests, and this has some, Retrotech have a few over here, it makes it really hard. Whereas because we're an independent organization, we're trusted in the UK.
Please keep chipping away at it, because it's, the ISO certification that ABAA has is still relatively new. And the trainings that they've been offering I think we're really just 3 years into it. They now started to offer some on the East Coast in Florida, and they're trying to move around to other parts of the country too. But it's just been a slow but steady roll forward, starting with Washington State and then trying to branch out from there. But eventually, it's going to have to grow more. So having your tools over here will definitely help.
Yeah.
And they focus more on large building. The ABBA training is more focused on large building testing really too. So there's another opportunity really.
Yep.
And that's what I was going to ask too about your lodgement system, like the kind of data that you have in there. Do you guys only focus on one building type, or do you guys do commercial and residential?
Commercial and residential. So one of the cool things about the lodgement system is when we started collecting data in 2015, I think one of the best decisions I've made in a very long time was to say, let's not just collect the minimum. Let's collect as much information as I can get the members to send me. So we didn't just say, hey, we need the size of the building and we need this part of the building. We said, add in the ventilation strategy, add in the footprint of the building, add in who you are, what you do, add in the equipment you use, add in your calibration variables. For the average test that comes in, we take between 200 and 250 pieces of data for each individual test. And we now have 1.6 million lodgements recorded in our lodgement database from all over the world. So we're able to cross-reference and look down that data, and we can break that down for single-fan tests, for commercial buildings, for single-fan commercial, for multi-fan domestic. We can look at all of the different types of fans. We can look at types of fans as in, we can pick up a Retrotec 2000 series fan and look at the average calibration for that fan over a period of time. We can see all of the tests that particular fan has done to see if there is any correlation between the average person using this particular, and it's less likely. I'm exaggerating to make a point, but if there was an issue with one of your fans or fan models, for example, I could pick that up before you could pick that up, because I can say, hey, a Retrotec 2000 series has a 10% higher pass rate than a Retrotec 5000 series fan. I can spot on you, how can that possibly be the case? Well, maybe there's an issue, or there's something that's showing up that's a bit odd. Not that hasn't happened, be super clear, but theoretically we have the data to be able to track that. What we actually do in our sound testing, in our acoustic testing side, is that we do track those things. So one of the requirements is that you need to provide a quick site calibration, and we track what we call drift. So we look at the drift of the devices. So if we see a device has drifted heavily from its original calibration point, we can alert the company that they have a device that seems to be broken before they even think about it being broken.
Wow.
Our software will flag that stuff. We can theoretically do, I say to our developer and I'll say to all of our members, we can do anything but not everything because we're limited by resource.
Sure.
So I have all of this data. I have, as I said, 1 billion data points. A data scientist's absolute dream. But we're limited by, it's just me and my computer. And so every now and then someone will go, oh, what's the correlation between X and Y? And I'll go, good idea. Let's chuck some data out there. Let's have a look. So the Lodgement system is just a brilliant centralized tool, independently owned, and the data is trusted. We don't throw away the data. We don't do anything weird and wonderful with that. We use it as a compliance tool, first and foremost, which is submit the data, receive, we check some of the pretty basic things. Have you met the 50 Pascal induced requirement? Are you using up-to-date calibrated kit? Are you using, have you done your calculations with the correct margin of error? Is your R squared greater than 0.98? All of these simple requirements. Without any of those things being correct, we can just block that certificate from being downloaded. So you cannot get a completion certificate for that house if it's not true and genuine or appropriate or meets the requirements. We can block that certificate. So first and foremost, it's a compliance tool, but after that, it becomes this very powerful tool. We get approached by the UK government here because we hold more data on new buildings than the local government do. So when the horrendous Grenfell fire happened in the UK, which it's pretty known around the world now, we were the first, not the first people, but the government contacted us to ask us how many high-rise buildings there were in London because they just didn't know. But we do, because we track all of the data for these new buildings, so we're able to then filter down and say, here are all the ones identified as certain size, certain height buildings, and we can feed that information and pass it out to local government. And there's so many advantages to having this centralized lodgement system and trying to think 10 stages ahead. What data is going to be needed in the future? Ventilation right now being a huge, our most popular thing that I get asked about. Nobody cares about blower door in the UK anymore. Well, they do, but it's such a normal process for us.
Yeah.
Right.
We're the first country in the world that does 100% blower door testing. So every individual apartment, every individual house, and every commercial building is tested. We're the first country in the world to do that.
Well, that fits right into the RetroTech tagline of every building tested. Like you'll see that all over our social media and everything. So
yeah.
The UK is a great example.
You can add a UK flag and a tick.
I was just going to ask really quickly, like, do you guys capture like the weather conditions at the time of tests and stuff like that, and also in the Lodgement system?
We have before and after temperatures, before and after barometric pressures. We don't take the wind speed, but we do have the zero flow, so we'd be able to pull off the average. We can look at, we could say, we could cross-reference the average height of a building and the average zero flow of a building and pull out that data and produce a graph, and it'd be exactly bell curve as you'd expect it to be. So all of those individual pieces of data that make up a test, every single one of those is collected by us.
That's excellent. Who has access to the data in the Lodgement system? Like, can anybody look up and see what a blower door number is for a certain building?
Yeah, just Barry.
Yeah,
just me.
You. Gotcha.
Just me. No, it's for the compliance side. If you have the unique certificate reference number and I think it's the postcode, or you can scan. There's a QR code now we use on each individual certificate. So if anybody tries to edit a certificate using a PDF editor, you can't edit the QR code. The QR code takes you to our webpage that has the data shown, but you've got to have the unique reference number or two unique reference numbers in order to look up an individual certificate. In terms of the big data, it's us as ATTMA, and not even the whole of the ATTMA team. Only myself, the developer, Paul Carling, our technical manager. We're the only three people that have access to the full set of data, and we have a policy about sharing. So we only share to university institutions, governments as requested, and anybody that asks us that we deem fit and relevant to hold that data. So if you came to me and said, hey, I want to know the average airtightness over the last 10 years, I would happily send you a list of the dates and the air tests and the target. And I could just send you that. 1.6 million lines on an Excel spreadsheet. And you can do with that because it's decentralized, I can take away anything that identifies the buildings, and I'd happily share that. But when it comes to actually getting into identifiable information, we are very, very protective over that database.
Yeah, that's great. I always thought it would be helpful, like if somebody was looking at purchasing a building, if they could access, what that blower door number is, so they could kind of know what they're getting into.
We have that in the UK, so
that's great. We do not have that here.
you can look up. So the air test goes into the energy model. So every home in the UK is subject to an energy model. In order to generate what we call an energy performance certificate, it's a legally binding document, the energy performance certificate. So whenever you buy a house or sell a house, you have to have an energy performance certificate, and that goes into your pack. You can look that up online in the UK. The Energy Performance Register is a public register, and it will show you the energy efficiency score of your building. But as part of that, you can scroll down and it will say your air tightness score either as tested or as assumed, if it was an assumed figure from back in the day. So we make that information is publicly available in the UK.
That's
no
great.
Hiding.
Yeah, I know. I really wish that was something that we had here, because the closest thing that we would have to that is probably our ResNet registry, which oversees residential construction. So sometimes it's required, sometimes it's not, but there's no way to go in and actually see what that number is. They keep that under a tight lock and key. So yeah, bring it over. It's definitely something we can get some value from. Yeah. I know one thing that a lot of organizations that deal with managing certifications and testing is quality assurance. What's a way that you guys manage that? What's your process for making sure everything is done in accordance to your standards?
Again, the Lodgement system. The Lodgement system is the heartbeat of what we do, because one of the, again, key successes we had in the UK was to show all of the building inspectors and get then written into the building code that if you are a member of the ATTMA, you can just submit a single page PDF certificate from the Lodgement system. That is just a Lodgement certificate, and the building inspector sees that Lodgement certificate, sees it has the ATTMA logo, and they are authorized to accept, which means they can just see that it's done. They don't need all of the data, the calibration, the massive report that goes with an air tightness test, all the data and graphs. They are authorized to accept just the single page certificate. In order to generate that certificate, you do it through the Lodgement system. All of your stuff needs to be up to date. You need to have insurance. You need to have calibration. Our calibration over here is real tight. Every piece of equipment every year. No exceptions. If your equipment isn't up to date, you don't have certification. If your insurances aren't up to date, you don't have certification. You cannot use the Lodgement system unless you play by the rules. And because it's a computer, computer says no. Computer doesn't like it. So get your stuff uploaded, get yourself back up to date, and then you can submit your tests and generate your certificates. So it's a very centralized, simple system that is used, and that's how we really manage quality control. We stop bad tests going out. We also then audit. We have a whole audit team that we can pull audits from any test I like. I can log in right now onto ATTMA Lodgement. I can click a test and I can say audit, and it sends them a link. They have to respond with a copy of the test data, a copy of the drawings or surface area calculation. They have to send a copy of their calibration information. We collate that and make sure it's all okay before we spew back out a report to them, which hopefully is all okay or not. Or we say, hey, the standard says you need to take 10 zero flow readings over 30 seconds. Looks like you've only done 8. That's a non-compliance. Now I want to know why. It's not just, oh, sorry. Now I want to know why that happened. So they'll have to then justify and say, this happened because it was a lapse of concentration. The lapse of concentration, what's the root cause analysis? The lack of concentration was because I was under pressure. Why were you under pressure? Because, we keep asking the question until we get to the answer. Is the answer incompetence, or is the answer something that was within their control? Or is it just, human error? Sometimes it's human error. So we dig in, and it makes testers better testers. If we pull them up and they have issues, we can spot those early on, and we can train that out of people so we can get them back into testing in accordance with the standard. When we train people here, we never train to the minimum requirements. We never say, hey, you have 7 readings is the minimum, and 35 pascals is the minimum. We train people in a different mindset. Always take 12 readings. Always go to 60 pascals. Always double check your temperatures. Always use 3D modeling software for your surface area calculation. Always verify that against the energy model. So we train people to be, 20% further on from the standard rather than just the minimum requirements, because then you can always delete data. You can always back off if something's wrong. You can never go and add data if it's not quite right.
Yeah, that's
you guys
great.
use surface area, huh? That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, just kidding.
I have a wonderful graph. I have a wonderful graph that shows. We also record what if people do have the volume, we record it, and we have this wonderful graph that compares surface area results versus ACH 50 results, and we're able to show below a certain size of building for your average dwelling here, it doesn't actually make a difference. But when you get into really big buildings, it makes a huge difference. I was out with Johnny K from Australia. Love you, Johnny K. What a guy. He was testing an extremely big university building, massive building. And he was like, oh man, this is the first biggest passive house in the Southern Hemisphere, commercial building. And I was like, great, what'd it get? He's like 0.5 something. Oh, this is amazing. And I was like, it got 3.2 on its surface area. Like, that's average. And it's this issue. Sean Maxwell, if you know Sean Maxwell as well, he has a real pet peeve about ACH 50 versus surface area, and how surface area is the one we should be using, not the volume. But I get it. Listen, I love blow door testing. It's been my life. I don't care enough to really go deeply into those arguments. I would much rather the test was done properly. We have the data for both, and let the energy modelers fight over which one they feel is most relevant for heating calculations or cooling calculations.
Yeah.
That's a pretty recent argument that keeps popping up, over the past few years that we see, Passive House US has started to use surface area instead of volume. Joe Stiebrick had a pretty good argument in one of his articles that says air leaks through surfaces, not volumes. So that's what we should look at. That's a good way to put it. So
we measure air loss though in volume, so you can counter that. But
yeah,
as
that's a good
point. I've not quite got to the point now where I care enough to have those fights. I've got an incredible technical manager that works for me, Sean Maxwell, in Australia. Those guys are deep into the technical. I'm much more of a holistic now. Let's get this. Let's get the process working. Let's do what we can for the business side of things. Let's keep everything going and running nice and smoothly, and let's make sure we air test them every single home in the country constantly for the rest of time. And let's focus on getting the targets down. That's more of my role now.
That's cool.
Yeah, so then the existing stock gets retested over time, so you can kind of see like whether or not air tightness efficiency of the home degrades.
Yeah, we have it's more for retrofit. So if the house has we have different levels of retrofit. So depending on what you do to amend the house, if you replace the windows or the roof or loft insulation, our building code has 3 categories. If you fall into category 3, or maybe category 1, I think it might be 3, 2, 1, then you are required to do a blow door test before and after to make sure you don't make the air leakage any worse. So you are encouraged to make the air leakage better or lower, and to fix the ventilation for retrofit homes. But if you're doing minor works, then there is no requirement. But where you're doing major works, air tightness and blow door is now a standard requirement. We've got that in the UK as well.
Yeah, so that you have building data from all kinds of buildings all over the world. Is there a certain building practice that an area is doing that stands out to you that's vastly different from what everybody else is doing, or do you think there's something that the rest of the world can learn from what a certain area is doing to achieve a certain goal?
It's a funny one because yes and no. I think some of the data that comes out from our system shows some of the construction methods you think are going to be the best ever. You get a lot of ICF, the internal concrete forming, where they use their almost Lego style bricks made of foam and they pour the concrete into the middle. I don't know if you have that there.
Yep.
You'd expect that to be perfect, right? There's no reason that shouldn't be unbelievable when it comes to its leakage. But that doesn't, it definitely performs better than the standard constructions we have in the UK, but nowhere near where I would expect. And timber frame or stick buildings in the UK don't perform anywhere near where they could do, because the practice of using tape between the membranes on the internal, we have the air barrier on the inside. A lot of those are just stapled rather than taped. And so the timber frame stats to me are always slightly off, because I think, oh man, if you just tape those membranes together, you have you go from an average of 4 meters cubed per hour per meter squared at 50 pascals down to like 1 overnight.
Yeah.
Just by applying the tapes. But the tapes, it's a labor intense job, and it costs money, and it's never been required. But so I'm always a bit surprised sometimes, not by how some are good, but just why some aren't better, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Sometimes trades just get set in their ways, and they don't want to. They say any kind of change is a hurdle that they have to clear. So yeah, we definitely fight a similar battle over here with certain details.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all over the world. It's ATTMA. Like they're in Australia, the UK, and other locations as well, right?
So UK based. We have members across various European countries. Some of the countries really have their stuff together. So France, for example, doing a brilliant job. I think they have like 1,200 blower door testers. They are testing everything. They really are doing well. Germany operates on a slightly different model, so they have a lot less testers. They do a lot less testing. Scandinavia, in the cold countries, you'd think they do a huge amount of testing. They really don't, because if it gets down to 10 degrees, 20 degrees Fahrenheit where you are, and your home isn't really very airtight, you know about it. It's not like in Texas where you get away with it. Yeah, it's not, whack the AC up a little bit. You really know about it. So they don't do as much blower door because the consequences are greater. There's this narrow band that kind of sweeps across Europe, and I'm sure maybe North Midland America, you'd have the same band where it's not cold enough that the consequences are too high, maybe like good chunks of Canada, but it's not warm enough. You're in this middle tepid section where you get nice warm winters, cold summers, and you do need to make sure your homes are nice and airtight, but you can kind of get away with not having them. That's the trick. So our members are all based in these little zones where air testing isn't, there's a consequence of it not being done. But in the hot countries, in Spain and Italy, they don't do much because sometimes they just don't have windows. Why would you? It's warm all year round. So the ATTMA members are there. So across kind of the Baltics, we have members in Latvia, we have members in Germany, we have some members in Spain. But then Middle East, we're pretty big. The Middle East is a really interesting place because one of the things that the Brits do very, very well is our service industry, but also our standards. The British standards are known around the world for being really very good. So the Middle East love to adopt a British standard. So in some of their green building codes, they quite literally say in the acoustic section of the Dubai Green Building Regulations, it says use England's approved document E building code. That's it. I think it actually just says in its entirety. So
yeah, why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah. So they looked at it and gone, nah, let's just copy what the Brits do. And we see that around the world. People look towards the Brits and they go, you've already got your stuff together. We'll just do what you do because it's obviously working. And that means our certification schemes can be used over there. And immediately we then have a bunch of members. We also have BREEAM, the British Research Establishment's Energy Assessment Model, which is like your lead, so they compete.
Okay.
In the Middle East, it depends who pays for the building. So if it's British funding, they'll insist on BREEAM. If it's American funding, they'll insist on LEED. So if it's BREEAM, it will say you need to be an ATTMA member. If it's LEED, they'll typically point to E779, and we look after a lot of the people to help them with E779. But so it's quite cool that we're able to influence and we can kind of ride that wave is probably the nicest way of saying it. We didn't create that wave over there. We just get to ride that wave.
Makes it easier.
Australia happened just because Sean Maxwell was Massachusetts resident, I believe, and moved to Manhattan, was doing testing across New York, met the love of his life, relocated to Australia, went over there and said, hey, why is no one doing blower door testing over here? It's what I know. And incredibly, he relocated, and then he was looking around about databases, trying to get some stats, and he Googled Airtightness database. ATTMA came up, and he phoned me one day and was like, what's the deal? Learning just like you are now. And before you know it, ATTMA Australia and New Zealand exists, and And I'm flying over there and we're making stuff happen and we're meeting with the government and we're trying to convince them to get it into the regs. And I think 2025 will finally be the year there's a bit of a breakthrough in not the regulations over there, because it is written into the building code, but you're also able to take a route called deemed to satisfy. So you can just say, yeah, I've built the building airtight, and you can sign a document and you can not do a blower door test. But the energy modeling over there is now going to allow you to choose an airtightness figure, the German approach. So you can choose an airtightness figure, and if you choose one that's not the default, you have to prove it with a blower door. So the Australian market's definitely about to pick up. And I presented to the New Zealand market 2 nights here last week to plenty of the government officials over there to say, hey, here is how it works in the UK. It's time. You can't avoid this anymore, New Zealand. It's time. So hopefully, I've not had much come back off that. But ATTMA is out there trying to do its little bit, punching well above its weight as this small UK business said to say, we'll support you. You can use our lodgement. Australia uses our lodgement system. We don't charge them a penny. New Zealand uses our lodgement system, the members that exist out there. We don't charge them a penny for using our lodgement system. We're not that kind of business. It would cost more in international fees than it would for me to charge ATTMA ANZ use of our lodgement system. So we give Sean everything. We give him all the tools, the brand name, and we're directors of that company, so we do look after it. It's what we call a WOFI, a wholly owned foreign enterprise. And we have ATTMA over there trying to push the boundaries via Sean Maxwell. And he does an incredible job under pretty tough circumstances. And that's kind of how we ended up around the world. And the story with the NABCTA is one for a beer in Denver.
Sure.
But we made it over there, and we try and do our little bit to influence. But some people like when the Brits come. Some people aren't happy when the Brits come. And they say, it's got to not come across too condescending and go, oh, look at you guys. The Brits are here with all your pomp and military and telling us how to do things. We don't like being told how to do things. We want to make our own mistakes. And we go, okay, fine. I don't mind.
Yeah. Well, any small step forward is progress. So just got to keep chugging along.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we ever talked about everything. We talked about how you actually got into this industry. You said you were, an acoustical consultant, and then, but really in the blower door world, like how did you kind of stumble into this?
Good question. I did an apprenticeship in engineering. I was not a good kid at school. I left school, did terrible in my exams, and had a real reality shock when I was 16 years old. So I went to study engineering. And I went to a college that you could join when you were 16. I was told by my school I couldn't stay on. That was me, you're out. And I went to study engineering, and I'm the type of guy that could take stuff apart and put it back together. I have a special, we'll call it a superpower. We won't call it anything else. We'll call it a superpower where I just loved fixing things. So I went to study engineering. I then worked for a company called Oxford Instruments Analytical. I did an apprenticeship there. And we built scanning electron microscopes, so we could zoom in like millions and millions of times into super cool stuff. We could analyze what things were made out of. I loved it. I loved every second of working there. And I got to the end of my apprenticeship, and there just wasn't a job for me. The job I wanted to do from there was to be a field engineer. The field engineers were traveling around the world. They were going to Japan. They were going to America. They were going to universities. They were installing these products and servicing the products. I wanted to do that, and that was it. It wasn't to be. There wasn't a job for me, so I had to move on. And I searched on the internet for field service engineer jobs, trying to see what I could do to travel the world. And there was a job that came up for BM Trada, which was the Timber Research and Development Association. And I think I applied on the Monday, interviewed on the Wednesday, was offered the job on a Friday, and I started on the Monday. It happened really quickly. My whole life turned upside down so fast.
Wow.
And it was this new thing called airtightness testing, and it had not really been around. And there was a couple of guys before me that were kind of doing it, and it was brand new. It was really cool. And we were doing example and demo tests for builders that I would say, hey, this is just dropped into the building code. You're going to need to do this on your next build. Let's come and test your existing builds. Let's show you how it's done. And then compliance testing kicked off. And before you know it, I was still very young. I think I was maybe 22 when I was offered the head of energy services job, which is like a business unit manager for that part of the business. And at the time, we were subcontracting a lot of acoustics, so I went to study my diploma in acoustics and noise control. And my now wife really helped me get through that because the maths was incredibly heavy, and we just kind of started growing this company. There was loads of us that were doing it. We were actually, I think, the second biggest air testing company in the UK at the time, and I was so young and so desperate to prove myself. And that was when I left. I got offered a job doing acoustic consultancy, so I left that company. I was there a year or so, and yeah, in that time, the trade association that we were part of had decided they were going to be this business, as we spoke about earlier, and they phoned me and said, "Come and do it. You're the guy. You're the guy." And as I said, I'll do it for a year. We'll do it for a year, and it's been over a decade.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I always love to see how different people kind of get into this. Air tightness testing. For your typical homeowner or building owner, just really isn't something that they've usually heard of before. So it's still kind of it's done all over the world, but it's still a very niche thing. So it's always fun to hear how people get into it.
And it's still fairly niche over here. I'll still not always talk about blow door if I go for dinner with some of my wife's colleagues or something, and they say, "What do you do?" And I'll go, "Certification of construction stuff."
It's hard to summarize it.
It's pretty tricky. And then sometimes I'll dig in and I'll talk about it, but other times I'll kind of skirt around the edges and just say, certain trades need to be licensed. Yeah, we license the trades, and stop there.
I have my 10-second elevator pitch. I got my 1-minute elevator pitch, and I got my
how much do you really want to know?
Depending on the audience. How much?
It's a fun one to explain. I used to go around saying we blow up buildings, and it's no longer really socially acceptable.
You don't want to say. Yeah, you don't want to say. Yeah, you don't want to say that anymore.
Because that's the 10-second pitch, right? What do you do for a living? I blow up buildings, and they go, "I'm sorry," and they think you're into dynamite, and you go, "No, with air, like a balloon," and they lose interest very quickly.
That's awesome.
So I don't know if we want to deal with that guy.
That's what.
Yeah.
Yeah, will you be at the AIVC conference this year in Montreal?
Maybe. I have attended quite a few of the AIVC conferences. It just depends on schedule. We're busy down here, and sometimes to fly out is a long way. And I'm getting to the age now where if you don't fly premium, then you really feel it for the next week.
Yeah.
So I pick and choose my conferences
especially overseas.
Pick and choose them based on what value we're going to get from that. So is there value to the business? Is there value to this business? And if I had to justify it to the membership, if I said, "Hey, I just spent $10,000 on flights and hotels and food."
Yeah, what was the value?
What's the return? And sometimes I can look at these conferences and go, it's in France, and it's a few, it's hundreds of dollars, and sometimes it's thousands of dollars. But it just depends where we are at the time. So AIVC and air quality and ventilation is becoming incredibly important as a business here to be looking after what we do. So it's more and more likely we're going to attend more of these events. But I've been submitting papers to quite a few of them. Hence the ABBA one. I thought, I've got an opportunity here. I reckon I could speak, and that helps my case. But and I really want to dig into with Laverne and spend some time learning about ABBA and the way they do training, because I want to see what the synergies are between those businesses. I'm also taking the opportunity to fly from Denver down to Houston to do some training, so that substantially helps offset some of the cost of those flights. So it's worked out pretty nice. But I am desperate to come and spend some time up with you guys and see the Retrotech labs. You every time I speak to you guys, you invite me, but I've just never made it to that end of the country. I'm always
that's all right.
It's
a long way away.
Yeah.
But I will. I'm going to make it happen.
That's right.
If I get to that way.
We certainly love to have you out.
That would be super cool.
Yeah, at the last day at VC conference, it was the first time I had a chance to meet your colleague Paul Carling in person. When I sat down at the lunch table, whatever, and he was sitting off to my left, and so. It's a good conversation. We were talking about you, but mostly about your golf game. And then,
yeah.
So it'd be great. Like if you do make it up this way, then we'll have to hit the links for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, that's good. Paul Carling is the ATTMA technical manager. He is unbelievably talented. The way he can do the maths. He can code like a developer. He thinks differently. He thinks 10 steps ahead when he's developing software, and he's just fantastic at what he does. So yeah, I'm glad to hear his comments about me were purely about my golf game. We'll bring that up.
That was the extent of it.
We'll bring that up in his appraisal this year.
Yeah, excellent.
Oh man. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you in Denver. It'll be good to catch up. I know it's been a while, but yeah, as we close up, anything else that you want to share with the listeners before we sign off?
I've got no particular message, and we do it well. I'm a big fan of independent organizations that are able to collect and look after the data, and I think if we could do that in America, we can positively input to the building codes. And I think that's what my talk is all about in Denver, is a bit of the history and from the UK perspective, and how the data that we have has influenced the building codes to make them better, so that we've become this messiah state is maybe a strong word, but we are the first to do 100% testing and look after the blower door industry. We truly fly the flag over here, and we don't even make the kit. There's no British companies that make the kit. We like the Retrotech stuff. It's super cool kit. It's Retrotech kit now is getting so good that we're having to use the old stuff to do our multi-fan blower door training because the new stuff is too good. So we have fans that don't spin as fast.
That was the goal.
Yeah. And it's amazing to see how the Retrotech kit has changed over time, because back when I was testing, I had some I used to use the old square fans. You remember those?
Oh, yeah. They had 900s. Yeah, I started in 1995, so I remember most of the stuff.
So the old 900s, and you'd put 3 of those in a door, and we'd use analog gauges. And nowadays we look at the test standards, and Paul Carling will say, "Oh no," and he'll talk about decimal places. And back in my day, I used to be like, "Is that?"
No, it's like you're tapping on magnetic gauges, and they're moving by several.
Is that 48 pascals or 52 pascals? And now we have these fans that can run on battery packs that can do the same flow rates as 3 of my old fans on a single fan rig. So we install the actual hard templates now are almost extinct, because everyone's just chucking in cloth bag doors because they're so quick and easy to go in, and they're using less fans. The buildings here are becoming much more airtight as well, so the fan capacity going up and the building leakage going down just means you can test what was a 3-fan test here, and you're starting to have to use the B rings and the C rings because these fans are becoming more and more powerful. So we're enjoying the Retrotech innovation, which is super cool. So just never forget we're over on 240 volt power here, so and so there's a lot of blower door happening, so please don't forget us when it comes to that. We need your
oh sure, and I'll keep
240 volt power and right hand drive, please. Right hand drive.
Oh man,
no, awesome. Well, it's a love having you as part of the community, the Airtightness community and stuff. You're just a great person to have involved in it.
Yeah, we certainly appreciate what you do, and the work that we all do just makes the world a better place. And as you guys move forward, we're here to help out in any way we can. We're just an email or a phone call away.
It's always much appreciated. I'm going to hold you to that as well. I've got a request already.
Sure.
All right, excellent. Email away.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me on, guys.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, Barry, this was great. Yeah, thanks for spending the time with us.